Sun Dogs and Yellowcake meant a lot to me, and I knew as soon as it occurred to me that that had to be the title of my book. It really is, it perfectly explains the dichotomy of life up in the north in this little community. Sun dogs are mirror images of the sun, and you can see from this photograph that you have the sun along the horizon and then two mirror images close by. And also this lovely arc that joins the two mirror images. It's a really magical sight when you see it up north, and it only occurs in certain conditions when it's cold and there's ice crystals in the air. Yellowcake is partially refined uranium ore, and it's yellow. So you have the contrast between the natural and the man-made. You've got the play on the colors. You've also got a play on power, the power of the sun and the power of uranium. And in the midst of all of that was this little community of 800 people that lived on the shores of Lake Athabasca, completely isolated from the outside world. There was one road and it led to the airport, and you could either fly out or you could take a boat to get in and out of the town. And this community of 800 people lived there from roughly 1955 to 1964 when the mine shut down. I grew up in this town along with my grandparents and my parents and my sister. And for me it was always just this marvelous place to grow up because we had total freedom. Not just kids, but adults too, and adults describe it as a kind of neverland. They said, one woman said to me when she left, she said, or when I was talking to her, she said, when we left, we had to grow up. And that was the kind of community it was. Because you were isolated, if you did not get along, you didn't stay. That was that simple. And so the purpose of this town was to produce uranium for the arms race during the Cold War, during the 1950s and 60s. The other interesting part of this town was that the man who founded the town was also the man who found Port Radium, which up on Great Bear Lake in the Northwest Territories, and that was the only source of uranium in North America that was known at the time. So he found first of all radium, but then the byproduct, the waste product, in fact, of the production of radium was uranium, and that was used to develop the atomic bomb in the Second World War. So you have all of this incredible history, none of which I knew anything about while I was growing up. And then you put in that milieu, you put this town of 800 people who really had no concept of what the uranium was being used for. They knew it was being shipped off to the United States, but that was it. And they had no concept either of whether or not this represented any danger to themselves or to the environment. It was kind of a blissful existence. So when I started to write the book, I'm like you, I never intended to write a book either. And when I retired from the practice of law in 2010, I did a few things, and then in 2014, I started thinking about my mother, who was then 87 years old, and all these years that she'd been telling us stories of life up in the town. And my memories were pretty brief because I was 11 when we left. And I thought, if I don't record some of these memories of hers, then I will forever regret that. And one thing led to another. I started to talk to other people from Gunnar, and they said, "Oh, are you writing a book?" So anyway, I wrote a book. And one of the challenges for me is that with the town that existed only for 10 years, and this is more than 50 years ago, and people being in the mining business, they moved all over Canada and the US and Europe. And topping that, women changed their names. Don't do that. It makes it really difficult to track you down later. So I started this process of reaching out to people, and one person led to another, and they led to a few others, and it was as much a story, the process of finding people as the actual stories that ended up in the book. I did know that the book had to be stories from the people themselves. It had to be told in their own words and not through my filter. And I wanted to have that authentic voice of the people who lived there. So I did talk to about 150 people to write this story, and my urgency was increased while I was in the process of writing the book, a number of people died. And the people who were young adults in the town were in their late 80s and 90s. And I knew if I didn't get it out quickly that I would miss them being able to share their stories with their families and also remember again their life up in Gunnar. It is, in a sense, a memoir of a town. And it has brought a great deal of joy to the people who live there. But it is also, because of the nature of the industry, it is an important historical recollection of uranium in Canada. And also a portrait of a time and place that we really don't know very much about. You know, life in the North is not really represented that well in our literature. And so this book does that. So Gunnar was a town of about 800 people, and there were a few native communities, indigenous communities nearby, but before the mines arrived, there was really no one except for these indigenous communities. And then once they discovered the uranium, people came flooding in. It was like a gold rush. It was just like the gold rush, because people could make unbelievable amounts of money. Even an ex-mayor from Toronto came trying to make his fortune. They came from all over. And in addition to people from Canada who were looking, southern Canada, who were looking for a better life, there were also many immigrants who came from Europe, because it was post-war, time was tough in Europe, and so they came the management of Gunnar did a survey, and at one time there were 35 different nationalities represented in this small town. It's just